I would now like to welcome Smriti Priya, Senior Project Manager of Roland Berger. With over 10 years of industry and consulting experience, Smriti is a pivotal member of Roland Berger's automotive practice in the Middle East. Today, she will explore the topic exploring sustainability across automotive aftermarket circular economy initiatives, sharing her insights on industry strategies and initiatives to promote sustainability and circular economy principles.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm glad to be speaking on a topic which is not only gaining traction in the market right now, but it is also something which is increasing in terms of the importance it's seeing from regulators, from corporates, from customers, and from, you can say, all the different stakeholders in the ecosystem. So the topic is of course about sustainability and circular economy in automotive aftermarket. But before we jump into automotive ecosystem, I wanted to just touch base on a few things, or you can say a few drivers, which are kind of leading to these sustainable trends across different industries. So, of course, companies have different emission targets, and we all know that different countries have set to completely become net zero by 2050, 2060, and some of those even have targets for 2040. Number two is, of course, regulatory compliance. So, as countries are striving for net zero or 100% emission free targets, they are, of course, putting different compliance or different regulatory requirements to be met or to be fulfilled by corporates. Risk mitigation, this is something where companies are trying to avoid getting into legal risk or getting into reputational risk by adopting more sustainable measures or by striving for circular economy. And of course, number four is limited availability of resources. And this is what is driving all the different actions and all the different initiatives in this field. So we of course cannot deny that many of the natural resources we are consuming are going to or are bound to end in a certain number of years. Maybe I can explain more on the next slide. So, for example, just to give you some perspective, um, our global economy predominantly is linear. So, of course, we are consuming around 92 gigatons of extracted resources, and out of that, only 8.6 gigaton of resources are recycled. So, basically, we are recycling, you can say, almost less than 10% of the resources being extracted across different industry sectors. So over here, for example, it's just a breakdown of different resources. We have around 51 gigaton of mineral resources, 10 gigaton of ores, 15 gigaton of fossil fuel, and 24.6 gigaton of biomass. So this is the breakdown of around 92 gigaton of extracted resources, satisfying needs across housing, communication, mobility, healthcare, services, consumables, and nutrition. And on the right hand side, there's a very familiar table. It's a periodic table, but it's just to give you some context. For example, of the different elements you see in the periodic table, you can see that there are elements which are going to get exhausted in next 5 to 50 years. There are elements which are going to be exhausted in next 50 to 100 years, while, for example, certain elements can even last for next 500 years. At the same time, the green ones are the elements which are, of course, renewable, and these are the elements we want to focus on in terms of circular economy. Now, let's now try to move into automotive space and what's happening and how we can establish or how we can incorporate more initiatives in this field in the automotive ecosystem. So, for example, based on our Roland Berger project experience, we deliver many projects in this space, and we can say that 86% of a car can be recovered based on different experiences we had with OEMs, with suppliers, with different automotive ecosystem participants. And for example, the next pie chart you see on the screen is just a breakdown of what's the material constituent of an electric car. So for a battery electric vehicle, we see 66% of the materials being metals, 7% being plastics, 5% being fluids, and 4% being rubber, and around 12% being cathode and anode materials, which are very specific to lithium-ion batteries. Now, through circular economy, what are we striving for in terms of automotive? We are striving for environmental benefits, we are striving for cost reduction, sales growth, regulatory compliance, and of course, process and operational benefits. Now, this is just to give you a context of what do we mean by circular economy and how we can basically implement circular economy in a real sense or in a real world scenario. So here we have two different cycles represented on the screen. One is the biological cycle and the other one is the technical cycle. So what is happening in the biological cycle is basically how different metals or how different resources are getting created. So, for example, all the different resources examples you see in the biological cycle, many of them are basically renewable resources. So we are talking about farming or collection, biochemical feedstock. It's getting into the biosphere and it's cascading into the consumer and user cycle. On the right hand side, we have the technical cycle. So how can we really implement circular economy in, you can say, industrial sense or corporate sense? So we have recycling, we have refurbishing, remanufacturing, reuse, redistribution, and of course repair. Now, in terms of emissions and how this is going to change, I know this slide is a bit technical, but I can try to explain in more layman language. So when we are talking about emissions, around, you can say, predominantly around 85% of emissions, or you can say the emission of a company is mostly in scope 3. And what do we mean by scope 3? So scope 3 can be upstream and downstream. Upstream is basically when a company is purchasing goods and services and there are carbon consumptions by these goods and service providers. It's basically a scope 3 upstream. And when, for example, we are talking about downstream, it's basically the emission which is gone into waste disposal, product uses. So it can be waste disposal, it can be outsourced activity, transportation, leased assets, employee business travel. And what we are seeing, for example, is that the emission profile is expected to change a lot when we adopt electric vehicles. So what we expect is that many of the scope 3 basically downstream activities are going to be converted into upstream. Because of course with an electric vehicle there is a major purchase happening of electrified components, lithium-ion batteries, and hence the purchased goods services, which is scope 3.1, or you can say the upstream scope 3, is going to increase in terms of relevance and share, and hence this is what should be focused when targeting circular economy initiatives. Now, I mean, this is just an illustration of how you can implement circular economy for manufacturing a vehicle. So, for example, first of all, we can have carbon-free use phase. Example, having green energy plants to power the manufacturing plant or power the assembly lines for vehicle manufacturing. We have, for example, green vehicle production, or decarbonization of the manufacturing plants. For the different chassis or subframe related components, we can use green metals. By green metals, what do we mean by green metals? So green metals implies that it's a green hydrogen, or you can say a reduced CO2 consumption lead steel and aluminium production. Then, for example, there is recycling concept which can be implemented for closed loop production and end of life vehicle. So, for example, if a vehicle, instead of once it crosses its lifetime, it's no more usable, instead of putting it in scrapyard, it can be, of course, recycled and the components can be refurbished and remanufactured. Now, for tires, for example, you can use renewable materials. So, for example, you can use more natural rubber tires or natural fiber-based plastic for tires. Similarly, for the vehicle frame or for the plastic parts, we can have we can have increased recycled content. For example, post pre-consumer plastic, secondary aluminum, etc. All right. Now, when we talk about when we talk about circular economy in aftermarket perspective, we are mainly talking about repair, refurbishment, and remanufacturing. Now, as we move from repair to remanufacturing, we are basically increasing, you can say, the percentage, or you can say the uptick which is coming from the circular economy. So, for example, in case of repair, basically you have a breakdown, you just go to a local garage or workshop, you just get it, at a minimal usage level, but it does not guarantee you performance. Refurbishment is where you actually implement industrial process to improve or ensure performance. So basically, It's not just repair, but it's basically about implementing certain processes to bring it back to the actual performance level or the desired performance level. Refurbishment is a standardized process, but it may require adaptation to parts. So, for example, a refurbished part, how well it is going to fit with the other vehicle components or other vehicle assembly, that's something which needs to be ensured. Remanufacturing is further level up, where basically the industrial process to remanufacture the parts returns the performance back to the OEM specification, or sometimes even to a better performance than the OEM manufactured parts. Now again, it's dependent on design and would require replacement of high share of parts. So can we really remanufacture, or can we really deploy this technology for all the different parts? Not really. So this is also something which needs to be taken into consideration. Now this is just to show the value chain of refurbishment and remanufacturing and how it works. It's a very simplistic value chain if you try to understand this. So basically, we have refurbishment or remanufacturing being conducted or being delivered by different types of stakeholders. So it could be done by an authorized workshop, it could be done by a wholesaler, and the wholesaler could also be taking the remanufactured parts from the workshop itself. It can also be done by scrap yards. And what's the source for the parts which are going to be supplied for remanufacturing? So basically, once it is remanufactured, it can go to directly OEMs, and OEMs can send it back to the workshop or send it back to the wholesale market, or it can also go to an independent or integrated wholesaler. Now, for refurbishment, of course, we have competition from the copies. So those are the competing markets or copies. You can call them white label products or independent aftermarket products. Of course, we have the competition from new parts. But what we are trying to say here is that this is kind of getting more and more established when we look at what's happening in some of the leading automotive markets. So I have a case study here from Europe, and this is the forecast in Europe from the European aftermarket and how it's going to be catered through remanufactured parts and through other aftermarket parts. So of course we don't see a lot of growth in terms of the aftermarket size itself. So it's expected to grow from around 200 to in 2025 to around 260. But when we look at the remanufactured parts, we clearly can see that the share has been increasing. So it used to be around 6% of the total aftermarket size or volume in 2015, and it's expected to go from 6% to around 11%. So of course, almost double down in terms of its share by 2030. And now what you see in the chart below is basically what is the breakdown of these remanufactured parts. So we see the highest share coming from the engine related parts and the fuel systems. Then we also see a significant share coming from electricals and electronics parts, and then we have transmission related parts, steering, wheels and brakes, and other parts. Now, how well this remanufacturing or refurbishment concept is being adopted by different stakeholders is also being reflected in different initiatives from OEMs or car manufacturers. So, for example, here we just have certain examples from different markets and what the OEMs are doing for ensuring that they are increasing the parts offerings which are basically coming from refurbished or remanufactured parts. So we have examples from Japanese and Chinese OEMs, so Toyota, Nissan, Honda, and even, for example, NIO, who have part offerings coming from these different sustainable initiatives. So they're offering a range of remanufactured parts. Similarly, we have examples from North American OEMs, and here we have these two new age OEMs, so you can say electric vehicle OEMs, Tesla and Rivian, who are engaged in remanufacturing parts such as batteries and drive units to enhance vehicle longevity and, of course, contribute to sustainability. Then we have multiple such examples from European OEMs, where we can see Renault and Stellantis having very strategic targets to quadruple sales of remanufactured parts by 2030. So they have even specified milestones to make sure that of the total aftermarket sales they are doing, they are increasing the share of remanufactured parts. Similarly, we have Encori, which is joint venture by BMW and Alba. There's real-life factories dedicated for remanufactured and refurbished parts. We have examples from Polestar, BMW, and Mercedes offer parts with up to 50% price advantage and same warranty as new parts. So these are basically the remanufactured parts. What we see in the bottom right of the slide are just examples of refurbishment of used cars with remanufactured parts. So, for example, BMW Premium Selection is here. The used cars are being refurbished or resold by using remanufactured parts. Similarly, Jaguars approved used cars, Maserati approved cars, Renault pre-owned Polestars, Volvo Select, Porsche approved pre-owned brands, and even pre-owned Mercedes. So all these different pre-owned, you can say, sub-brands of luxury or premium OEMs are basically increasing the contribution or the share of remanufactured parts. I think this should be all. Now, as a company, we are a consultancy service provider, and we have a lot of focus on circular economy and sustainability initiatives. It's not only for automotive, but across different sectors. For example, we have technology experts dedicated to this across polymers, plastic, leather, textiles, metals, steel, aluminium, rare earth. We have decarbonization lever database and shadow calculation, which is of course coming from different projects we deliver worldwide for clients from different sectors. We have the value chain knowledge database, which is again something we have generated from our work across different clients. We have Thought Leadership. So Think Act is a magazine we published, and recently, in the recent years, there has been a lot of focus on sustainable and circular economy topics. And of course, we have smart project features, which basically can tailor the project needs to more sustainable requirements. I think this would be all from my side. I'm open to any questions, any clarifications you might have. Any questions? All right, thanks a lot. Thank you for your time.